Welcome back, everybody. This is Grace, or Gibby, whatever you prefer, and today I'm coming back with a guide to beat the Shadowscythe Virophage boss, which is the final boss of the War Between Shadows saga, and it unlocks a very good dodge armor, Shadowfall Raiment. Not the best dodge armor, but a lot of people struggle with the boss, so I thought I would make a guide. Now it has 4 phases, and before each phase you have to fight 2 monsters. The monsters aren't hard, so I'll just be showing clips of the 4 boss phases. The first phase is very simple. It has a slight backlash effect, which adds some light damage and some dark damage, and then every time it casts its skill, it imbues your attacks with light or darkness for 1 turn. If you use statuses on the bosses, then it gets a damage reduction and a potential daze after the special attack, but you don't need to worry about that because the boss is very easy in phase 1. You can simply attack him down, and then when he uses his special attack, as you'll see me do, I either drink a health potion to stall my turn while my attacks are imbued with an element that will heal him, or I use a tome, which is in this case Healing Branch, but you can use Lore Master's Tome or Lightning Rod, which are both available very easily. They're in my item guide. But I use Healing Branch and I use Draw Mana, which effectively skips my turn, so I don't heal him with my imbued attacks. It's a very simple part for phase 1. You shouldn't have any problems with it. Now when you go to phase 2, in the timestamps, I will explain phase 2. So just a quick note about the boss that I'm going to be taking on in this video. The way it works is basically that it does attacks based on your highest resistance between light and dark. So if your dark resistance is higher, it'll always attack with dark, and if your light resistance is higher, it'll always attack with light. So the way we get around this to mitigate its damage as much as possible is by sort of gaming the system. Now you'll see that whenever I wore armor and a shield, I tried to do it so that my light resistance was just a little bit lower than my dark resistance. And I did that so that when I equipped Liquid Courage, my dark resistance might look like 56 or 66 and higher than my light resistance, so the monster would attack it, but in reality all that darkness damage is being reduced by 50%. So it's doing less damage than it would if it attacked my light resistance. And that is the best way to reduce the damage you take. You can also use a shadow armor, which has low resistance to both light and dark, and a shadow shield, but you don't need to. As I showed you, you can do it just in a normal armor with balanced light and darkness resistance and with the Liquid Courage Mist. Now I'll get into the specific mechanics of each phase, but just wear that type of armor and shield, figure out whatever combination of gear you can get to get a very close light and dark resist with your dark slightly higher, use Liquid Courage, and the boss's basic attacks will do very little damage. Now I'll get into the mechanics for real this time. Okay, so you beat phase 1 and now you're on phase 2. Phase 2 is a little bit more annoying because it has a regeneration effect built in. So the way it works is that it regens a lot of HP, usually between 400 and 500 at base, every turn after its attack. Now you might be thinking it's impossible to damage through that, and unless you're using a very strong setup, that's pretty much true. However, his mechanic is that every time he casts his skill, he charges up for a turn right before casting it. Now, when he's charging up, if you do anything that can stun him, it doesn't have to stun him, but it can. So like a daze, a 20% daze would trigger it. A 100% paralyze would also trigger it. But it doesn't have to be a 100% chance of a stun. But anything that can stun him, if you afflict it on him, then his attack is cancelled, and he loses healing power and takes extra damage for a few turns. Now, it also works if you just hit him with 4 separate hit counts. So, in this guide, I'm going to be using the Tyrannosaurus Rex Basket Breath ability, because it has 8 hits, so even if you miss a couple of them, you'll still hit him more than 4 times. I think that's easier than any paralyze or stunning techniques. So simply save your SP, and if you're a Guardian, you can use Essence Orb, so it's much easier, because his damage output is pretty low. And save your SP, and whenever he charges up and uses all his SP and goes into the charging phase, there's a pop-up for it. Simply use Basket Breath. That'll stop his super ability. And then he will have weaker and weaker healing. And after about 3 times, when you weaken his healing by disrupting his special attack, then you can pretty much just attack him down, and he won't be able to out-heal it anymore. So that's the way to do it. I will see you guys at Phase 3 after you beat Phase 2. Simply skip to the timestamp, and I will explain the mechanics and the strategy there. So phase 3 of the boss is actually almost as easy as phase 1. The reason is because we're using our Dark and Light Resist and a Darkness Reduction Misc to make it do little damage with its basic attacks, we don't really have to worry about how much damage it's dealing. And its mechanics are different. So basically, it can't be stunned. But if you do stun it, it loses a lot of SP getting out of that stun. So it pays its SP to get out of the stun. However, you don't need to stun any of this, and as I show you in the video, his damage output versus his health simply isn't strong enough to pose a threat. So you can simply attack him down because he doesn't have any healing mechanics in this phase. And you can simply attack him down, tank his special attack with the neutral Dark and Light Resist with a Dark Resistance Misc, as I explained at the beginning of the video. And then you will simply beat him after a couple turns. Didn't take me too long. I think it took about 20 turns, so not very slow at all, very quick. Phase 3 is pretty easy. I will see you at phase 4, which is the most difficult part. Okay, so if you've made it to phase 4, you're doing good. And the good thing is, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but all of the phases, if you fail them, you can just flee, or if you die, you go back and you just have to fight through 2 monsters, and then you're back at that phase. But phase 4, the way it works is that it punishes you for using multi-hits of the same element. So it has a counter. So if you attack with a fire armor and you do 2 hits, the counter goes up by 1. If you hit with fire again, the counter goes up again. Now, if you only do 1 hit of each element, the counter doesn't go up at all. But if you do multiple hits of each element, the counter goes up and up and up. Now you might be saying, counter this, counter that, what does it do? The counter, first of all, the more stacks on the counter, so the more times you've hit it with the same element, the skill does more damage after it casts its skill. Second of all, it applies a permanent regeneration effect, and you can't reduce this permanent regeneration effect by any other means or any other mechanic. It is just there. So once you mess up, the regeneration is there, and it gets stronger and stronger the more you hit it with the same element. So if you hit it with the same element twice in a turn, the regeneration isn't that bad. But if you do that for 5 specials in a row, the regeneration builds up very high. Or if you hit it 5 times in a turn with the same element, the regeneration builds up very quickly. So it very quickly becomes impossible to out DPS the healing it gets. Now, the way to get around this is to only use one attack of each element each time it does its special, because that resets after the special. So if I hit it with a fire, then an earth, then a water, then a wind, then an energy, then it does its special, then I can again hit it with a fire and an earth, then a wind, then a water, then an energy. And that's pretty much what I do in this video. So if you hit it one at a time, you are at no danger. The damage output is pretty low, and the healing does not happen. So as you can see, I'm using a one-hit armor, which is Yulgar's energy plate. You could also use a one-hit armor skill or one-hit spells. Some good one-hit spells for mages are Boulder Dash and Breath of the Ice Lord. There are other options, but those are two good ones. Now, you'll see at the end of the video that I actually use Basket Breath on it. And you might be thinking, oh, Basket Breath has 8 hits. Why did he do that? The reason I did that is because I had failed the boss earlier because I got unlucky with my weapon specials proccing. And when the weapon specials proc, they do multiple hits, so the regen gets stronger. So the reason I used Basket Breath was I thought, well, if I let this phase go off, then the regeneration will get too strong because I hit him with the same element too many times. So instead, I used Basket Breath to do the maximum damage and kill him before he could do his special attack. Once he's at 1000 HP, I recommend just nuking him down with whatever method, as long as he's not close to doing his special. So when I started, he had like 100 SP, so I knew he wouldn't do his special for a few turns, so I could hit him with all my damage and kill him. Now, the way to make sure this doesn't happen, and you don't have to worry about things like that, is if you use 0 proc weapons. Now, 0 proc weapons are good because they don't have a special. So if you use them in a one-hit armor, like the one I was using, then you will simply do one hit of each element, and you can just cycle through them like I was doing, but you won't have the risk of doing multiple hits of one element. So that's what I recommend. Get yourself some trusty one-hit weapons without procs, without special procs, and you'll be just fine to take them on with no RNG required. So that's pretty much it for all 4 phases. The Admiral board, it's good. It's not amazing, but it's good. I recommend purchasing it. The challenge mode is the same mechanics. It's just harder stats and damage. So I didn't do it because I'm using very bad gear. But if you want to try it and you have better gear, feel free to go ahead. Just know that these mechanics will help get you through. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope that this was helpful. And I will see you guys again in the next one. Peace.